Hello everyone. Thank you so much for staying. This is Bookie's Hub, and I am Bookie. If this is your first time here, I welcome you to the world of wellness. And if you're returning, thank you so much for sticking back us. I do appreciate you. Last week we had an interview with Dr. Awesome, and he introduced us to the significance of mindfulness in in the world of wellness. Today is the part two and the concluding part on what role mindfulness plays in all the 8 dimensions of wellness. It promises to be interesting, so please sit back, relax, and have a good time with us as we discuss. I'm sure you will be able to employ all that you will gather from this interview, and it will help to make your journey a better one. Before we get right into it, this is a good time to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe, like, and share. I'm sure you'll be helping someone with information that will help make their journey better. Thank you as you do so. And so let's get right into it.
I just wanted you to tell us how mindfulness, what role it plays in each of these dimensions. I know definitely mindfulness plays a role in all of them. Physical.
Good. So if you recall, a few minutes ago, I talked about how mindfulness helps the improvement of the immune system. Scientifically, people have always thought that genetically speaking, what is this is hereditary, whatever is from your lineage, it is what will be passed to you and all this stuff. There's a body of research that talks to how mindfulness has been able to shift genetics. And we, in our world of mindfulness and positive psychology and coaching psychology, we refer to this as epigenetics. And people can Google this. So, and the one thing that many of us take for granted is our breathing. So by virtue of, the global pandemic, many people now appreciate breathing more than ever before. Now, the reality about that is that many of us are not aware of our breathing. And I'm going to ask you and your audience who will watch this, you may lower your gaze, but let's just do this for a minute. And in a bid for us to experience the power of what I'm talking about, I would ask everyone to take a deep breath in and out. In and out. In and out. Now, you may open your eyes, you may, bring your gaze back to consciousness. But the one thing I'd like to do right now, I'd like to ask you, how do you feel?
A lot calmer, refreshed. Yeah.
Great. Now, we did it for less than 1 minute.
Yeah.
Typically, a mindfulness session recommends that you do it for about 10 minutes a day. I can tell you from my professional practice that I feel a lot healthier as a person. I know the things that have shifted in my mind space by virtue of this. When I was much younger, I know the challenges I was battling with regards to my health. Most of those challenges are no longer a part of my life. And so here is the reality. That is an evidence-based experience. So once there is a shift in the well-being, the inner health.
Yeah.
And usually I like to call it an inner work. So when we do this inner work, it shifts our immune system's disposition and can alter our biology, as it were. So that is my first response with regards to the physical.
The second one is environmental wellness.
Okay. Now, I like the fact that I thought I heard you say wealth. Because since COVID started, 1 cent, rand, naira, dollar, pound has not left the planet. And all that we need to be able to fully function on the planet is present here. What we need to do is we need to work, do the inner work. And I like the example I gave first. So the inner work is what creates inner well-being. And that inner well-being is what helps us not to be distracted by the distractions of the environment. There's a lot of noise, clutter, that can become distractions. So for us to be well as a person, we need to first be, for the environment to be well, the people who live in the environment need to first be well. And they will then take care of their environment. So for example, I am speaking to you from a sparkling, clean house. That's why my energy level can be felt by you and your viewers. Health is our very first wealth. So when we look after ourselves, we are uncomfortable with anything that does not feel right around us. And so we need to then begin to give attention to our environment. And in giving attention to our environment, we treat the planet right. We don't put to the earth and the planet the stuff that will not help it to nourish itself and then help us to flourish, because we are a reflection of our environment. So from a cognitive perspective, many people who are having health challenges, it begins in between their ears. And so, for example, I wake up in the morning and the first thing that I do, I don't get into autopilot. Many people who are listening wake up in the morning and the first thing they do is they grab their cell phones. That's autopilot mode.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to ask your viewers to do tomorrow. Don't pick up your cell phone the moment you wake up. Even if you want to pick it up and you remember what I said, put the phone down and let your mind know that you are no longer going to allow you to be on autopilot. Why am I saying this? Because you are your mind. And so as you decide not to allow whatever it is that has become an autopilot mode for you prior to this time, is that you consciously bring yourself to that space where you don't grab your cell phone. And I don't grab my cell phone first thing in the morning. As I get up from my bed, so my waking up and getting up moment are two different things. When I wake up, I am awake and I am aware and I express gratitude for being alive. And that expression of gratitude in itself is expressed through my being, and intentionally so it energizes me, and that gratitude is like a vitamin for my soul, as it were. And as I express that gratitude, I get up from the bed and I put my feet on the ground. Then I'm able to then feel, I am grateful for that feeling. And then I put my feet into my house shoes and then walk out of the room, intentionally moving my body. Movement is medicine. And then go grab water to then heat up and take my wellness coffee. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm taking an organic green tea. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because of the focus of your program. You are as well as your mind. For you to be mentally well, you need to be sensing, you need to be feeling, you need to be in touch, in tune, and in sequence. And these are some of the things that impacts on mental well-being. Intellectually speaking, when you are in that space, you are able to experience what a gentleman by the name Dr. Bernard calls intuitive hits, where you get intuition, you get ideas, and those ideas can grow to become ideologies that then emerge to become philosophies, and those philosophies become a lifestyle. It depends on, you know, how far and where a person wants to go. So for me, this is how I wake up and get into that state of awareness and allow myself to flourish, as it were, to flower. And these things are like a ritual. It's what we call the 4 to 5 a.m. club. People who lead economies, who run global brands, this is their pattern. They wake up between 4 5 a.m. and they don't rush to grab their cell phones. They don't rush to watch the news feed. They are conscious and careful of what they are feeding their minds, because that they know that their mind is a very important field, and what they feed that mind can shape, alter, or bring navigation to their day, their life, their week.
Yeah, a lot of things you have touched on there. Let's go to the next one, spiritual wellness.
So we as human beings are spirit beings, and recognizing that is so important. Now, spirituality is not religion. There's a big difference. Now, I've come to realize that what spirituality means for some people in West Africa is different from what spirituality means for somebody in East Asia. And so we need to be open to the point where we are living a non-judgmental life. Remember the definition I gave you about what mindfulness is, where we're living non-judgmental. So the man who is living in Asia and possibly has never heard of the things you have heard about based on your environment and your background or your exposure, does not necessarily mean that man is not spiritual. If the man wakes up with gratitude to his creator and he expresses that gratitude and prays in his own local language or the lingua franca that they are used to, and because you don't understand it as a person, you judge that person. That's what a limited mind does.
Yeah.
It's not what an exposed mind. So that's why I said spirituality is not religion. And from our findings, the one universal connector for spirituality is unconditional love. And so I'd like to put that forward to say it is so apt that we realize here that this transcends race. It transcends religion. Most importantly, it embraces relationships. And for me, that's what I'd like to just, use to double click on spirituality.
The next one is financial wellness.
Now, many people think that the money they have in the bank is what it means to be wealthy. No, the money you have in the bank is work you have already done, or value you've already added, or contribution you have already made that earned that into your bank account. So technically, that is in the past. The money may still be there, but it happened based on something that happened in your past. So to be living in that past is the worst thing any human being can do to themselves. What we need to be conscious of is that financial wellness should be approached from a current, a present perspective. So money is referred to as currency. And typically the word currency comes from the word current, which means it is right now. What we're doing right now is current. And by virtue of continuing on this, the impact of what you are going to do, the channel you have, can create a currency for you. That is how to raise our financial wellness, where we do not dwell on the cash that is in the bank, but we make ourselves a resource to the point where we are connected to the source and fresh resources available to us by virtue of input and impact. And that then leads towards currency. In a nutshell, I'm saying, let your potential be so potent that it pours forth possibilities as you present yourself to become a channel of good.
The next one is occupational wellness.
When we talk occupational wellness, it's actually the potential to attain what we call equilibrium. And so a state of equilibrium between work, leisure, and that place of stress. And you know, so we're able to make good relationships with our co-workers. Now, for that to happen, the very first thing that needs to happen is that the person needs to be in a place and space of equilibrium. This is the best way I can explain it. And in one of my sessions, I try to use a word called equanimity to explain it. And let me unpack that for you.
Please do.
If you and I were doing this recording, say by the Val River here in Gauteng, and maybe I was sitting by the river, and you ask me this question, I will invite you and your media crew to follow me as I stand and look into the river. And while looking into the river, I will explain to you that at the very bottom of the river, there is a rock. That rock, the fact that I can see the rock and I can see the rock, it means I am one with that rock. That is being in a state of equanimity, where you are one with what you are seeing. The moment you become one, it becomes easy for you to recognize that you are a person just like the other person is a person. And the same way you would like to be honored and respected and provided support for is the same way you should provide support for whoever it is that is in your space, whether you are their supervisor or they are your supervisor. The day we get into that place where we think of the well-being of everyone, regardless of their place or space in organizations, we will have an organization that is in that state of equilibrium. And then we're able to easily respect the need for people to be in that state of well-being, because every one of us is connected to every one of us. And that's where the word interconnectivity comes in. And that's another dimension of mindfulness I would not like to go into.
Right. The next one is an interesting one, and it's social wellness.
Social wellness in our world, in the mindfulness world and coaching psychology world, it's also what is called interconnectivity. And this basically refers to, relationships we have with ourselves and others. In other words, where we're able to offer support in difficult times. And there's a track that really highlights this in the track of what it means to be a mindful leader. And one of the connectors is compassion. Now, the reality is that many people sometimes assume that what we are talking about is, some people think it's that place where you are showing empathy, which is what it should be,
Yeah.
rather than sympathy, which is what it should be not. And there's a big difference between empathy and sympathy.
True.
So when we embrace that and we realize that the same way I would not like people to sympathize with me, I'd love people to empathize with me when I'm in a challenging situation. And the COVID has put the entire world in various situations. Every family has had one challenge or the other, based on COVID. So, and empathizing is the way to go. So that should then be embedded, inoculated, imputed into our social wellness, where we are interconnected with each other, and we treat people right, we respect them to the point where we interact with them rightly, and we offer support where it's needed, but also realize that it is also a way to build healthy and nurturing relationships. Because it will come back to us. We would eventually need people to also be patient with us when we are not in the right space, to be able to show up and bring our best self, as it were.
The final one is emotional wellness.
Okay, so while I unpacked what I had unpacked about how mindfulness impacts all of our lives, I had talked about it, and maybe I should just go back to it. Now, we've been told in the past not to cry, as men. However, I can tell you that I have had sessions with CEOs, and the CEO was crying. And the reason why the CEO allowed himself to cry was because it was not a one touch. We had sessions that built up. And that then opened the CEO to the point where he recognized there was a need for him to be vulnerable. Now, and I brought that up because of what I'm about to say. Many times as human beings, we don't want to cry because we think,
Weakness.
we are expressing weakness. The reality is it's actually an expression of strength. Vulnerability, to make yourself vulnerable, to bring yourself to that place of vulnerability, what it does is it begins to lower your stress level. As it lowers your stress level, it decreases your level of anxiety. As it decreases your level of anxiety, your level of awareness is deeper, and you have more clarity. And clarity raises your level of consciousness. As your level of consciousness is raised, you are able to flower, and as a leader, get into what we call flow state. That's the best place anybody can be. It impacts on your wealth, it impacts on your health, it impacts on your mental well-being, it impacts on your social ability to communicate and be compassionate. It helps you to be your best self, to also be aware of how you're feeling, what you're feeling, noticing it to the point where you allow yourself to be vulnerable when you need to, and recognize that that is how you become a whole being who is alive and well.
Oh, thank you so much. You have really touched on several factors. From your end, what would you like to say to our listeners, our viewers right now, on how to approach wellness from the place of mindfulness?
Okay, so I think the first thing I'd like to say, and that basically, talks to several things that I have highlighted. Let me take it from the last one. Setting oneself free is sitting with the emotions. And when you sit with the emotions, you are able to soar upwards into a new space that is beckoning on you. because a new space is always beckoning on every one of us.
Yeah.
Declining to take action in the right direction nullifies strength. And it does it slowly. But surely it then sends one down a slippery slope. Every child is born mindful. Living daily from a mind fully aware is a gift that every adult can return to through practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to be with us today. And we would like to wish you the very best in all of your endeavors. We will be definitely seeing you again. Thank you. It was a pleasure having you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, people. Thank you so very much for being a part of the meeting today. It was really eye-opening and it was motivational. I know a lot of us knew a thing or two about mindfulness, but hearing it from an expert in that field rings home some more truth. And I'm sure we'll pay more attention to how we approach the mindfulness aspect of our lives. And just like we've been told, it's not only positive things you should be mindful of. You should be mindful of the negative as well. But what you do with what you're mindful of is what eventually tells how that you have used the mindfulness to your own advantage. And believe me, you can use it to your advantage. Um, Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.